Parents and families woke up in a nightmare today after another deadly school shooting yesterday took the lives of 19 children and 2 teachers in the small town of Uvalde, Texas. Authorities say the rampage in Robb Elementary school ended only after Border Patrol agents rushed into the school and killed the lone gunman. A massacre entering the record books as the second deadliest school shooting in U.S. history following Sandy Hook's 10 years ago. We'll get into this devastating news in tonight's Hold the Line.
These kinds of mass shootings rarely happen anywhere else in the world. Why? They have mental health problems. They have domestic disputes in other countries. They have people who are lost. But these kinds of mass shootings never happen with the kind of frequency they happen in America. Why? Why are we willing to live with this carnage? Why do we keep letting this happen? Where in God's name is our backbone to have the courage to deal with it and stand up to the lobbies?
Stand up to the lobbies, he says. That's going to solve it. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. Look, it is a day of national mourning today. A horrific mass murder of children at a school in Texas occurred, and there is, of course, the immediate grief and the sense of loss, obviously, for the community, for the families, first and foremost, affected in this mass murder directly. And then the whole country dealing with what is a shock, what feels like a gut punch and national heartbreak going on. And this is already, unfortunately, being turned into an issue of politics by Democrats, including the very President of the United States himself, who you saw there, and we'll speak more about that in a moment. But here's first off what we know about this shooting that occurred yesterday. This is from Governor Abbott and Texas Public Safety. The name of the shooter, Salvador Ramos. He used an AR-15, had no known mental health history problems, but plenty of people around him knew that he was deeply troubled and a person that was concerning, to say the least. Reportedly a high school dropout, no reported criminal history before this mass murder incident, but he did post a Facebook comment approximately 30 minutes before he went on this shooting rampage and said he was on Facebook going to shoot an elementary school. There are a lot of questions that people have now about how could something like this happen? Why weren't the security procedures at the school sufficient to stop a lunatic like this? There was someone who was present from a security perspective. It didn't seem that that individual was able to stop this mass shooting from occurring. And what would be the best way forward to stop a situation like this, or rather to hopefully prevent as many of these possible scenarios in the future as we could possibly do? Those are the kinds of discussions we should be having now, along with also the mental health issue here of involuntary commitment of those who are criminally insane, true psychopaths like this individual. Become very difficult to have somebody involuntarily committed, and any discussion of red flag laws, for example, goes into a very difficult range of punishing people before they've actually necessarily committed a criminal act, with the idea they might commit a criminal act in the near future. This is complicated stuff. But to Democrats, they seem to think they have the answer. They think that they know how to solve this issue. Joe Biden tweeted, the president, the idea that an 18-year-old can walk into a store and buy assault weapons is just wrong. What in God's name do you need an assault weapon for except to kill someone? AR-15 is the most popular rifle in America in terms of ownership. There are literally millions, perhaps tens of millions of Americans who own an AR-15 or a similar semi-automatic rifle. And of the millions of law-abiding gun owners who have that weapon, they never break any law with that gun, or really any law, period. So we're going to now have what exactly? We're going to have a law dictated to us by Democrats who don't actually know very much about public safety, firearms laws, and have no respect whatsoever for the Second Amendment. A lot of crying out for action from politicians like Joe Biden. And here's Kamala Harris doing the same thing, just saying we have to do something. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Here's the vice president.
I think we all know and have said many times with each other, enough is enough. Enough is enough. As a nation, we have to have the courage to take action and understand the nexus between what makes for reasonable and sensible public policy to ensure something like this never happens again.
Never happens again. Okay, so what is it? What do they want? There's a seemingly a certainty among Democrats because they are yelling at people who they disagree with politically on completely unrelated matters, by the way. They just always assume, well, if you're a Republican, you're a bad person and you don't care about a situation like this. A lot of shouting about how we need to take action, and people like Senator Chris Murphy saying, what are we doing? Watch.
What are we doing? What are we doing? Just days after a shooter walked into a grocery store to gun down African American patrons, we have another Sandy Hook on our hands. What are we doing? There have been more mass shootings than days in the year. Why do you spend all this time running for the United States Senate? Why do you go through all the hassle of getting this job, of putting yourself in a position of authority, if your answer is that as this slaughter increases, as our kids run for their lives, we do nothing?
It's a horrible thing that occurred. It is beyond human comprehension that anybody could be as evil as this shooter was. And the Democrats think that the problem should be addressed now by shouting about how we need to do something and be courageous. Okay, what? What do they want to be done here? We know that after a mass shooting now, there is a very clear Democrat response that always, they make it very partisan right away. There's no mourning period allowed. Joe Biden last night went on TV to push partisan agenda items in the aftermath of this and to politicize the deaths of children. That's what's actually going on here. And we all see it. We understand what's happening. It's not the first time they do this. They do this repeatedly. Or if it's a white shooter, we'll hear about how it is white nationalism, white supremacy, and then there's other political demands that Democrats make. As a result, in this case, because the shooter was a Latino male, there isn't that white supremacy narrative, so it's all about guns, all about going after the guns. There are almost 400 million guns estimated in American hands right now. There are 330 million people in the country. What do Democrats want us to do? You start to get the sense this is really just about, for a lot of these politicians, a lot of these public figures, histrionics and about themselves, about making this about them. And the best example of this would be the Beto O'Rourke absurdity today, disrespectfully confronting Governor Abbott, the actual governor of Texas, dealing with an actual crisis, an atrocity, trying to give information to the people, trying to handle the situation in the aftermath of this mass murder. And Beto O'Rourke stands up during a press conference to shout down the governor because Beto O'Rourke is a narcissistic maniac. Watch this.
Sit down and don't play this.
The next shooting is right now, and you are doing nothing.
No, he needs to get his ass. This isn't the place to talk this over.
This is totally predictable when you...
Sir, you're out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Please leave this auditorium. I can't believe you're a sick son of a that would come to a deal like this to make a political issue.
He is a sick SOB. We'll have more on this devastating shooting and the growing calls for gun control with CEO of American Majority, Ned Ryan, up next. Right now, let's talk about protecting your home. If you own a home or property, here's 2 reasons you never want to become the victim of home title fraud. Reason number 1, when a cyber criminal sneakily worms his way onto your home's title, he'll take out loan after loan using your home's equity, then he'll vanish, leaving you to prove you didn't commit fraud. Number 2, you could be a victim of home title fraud and not know it for months. No agency notifies you or asks you if you sold your home or added someone to the title. You'll find out when the collection calls start for those loans, which you never took out. Nobody knows more about how to help stop this crime than Home Title Lock, America's trusted leader. Here's what I urge you to do. Go to HometitleLock.com and read the testimonials from retired FBI agents and others. Then register your home address to see if you're already a victim. When you protect your home, tell them Buck Sexton sent you for 30 free days of protection. That's HometitleLock.com. Again, HometitleLock.com. As the nation reels from another deadly mass shooting in schools, the call for gun control are pouring in from all corners of society. Golden State Warriors head coach Steve Kerr gave a particularly passionate speech before Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals last night. Watch.
And in the last 10 days, we've had elderly black people killed in a supermarket in Buffalo. We've had Asian churchgoers killed in Southern California. And now we have children murdered at school. When are we going to do something?
Joining me now with reaction, the CEO of American Majority, Ned Ryan. Ned, appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, we're all horrified at what happened, but it seems now that the immediate response you get from Democrats and people like Steve Kerr, whatever, in public life is this shouting at their political opponents to do something. And then when we say, well, what do you want to be done? They just keep shouting at it.
Yeah, this to me is, again, the same response we've seen again and again and again from Democrats. They don't want to have any solution except for we want to take all the guns away. We don't want to have the Second Amendment. And if you don't do what we want to do, then you're evil, cruel, despicable human beings. There are real solutions, Buck, to this. First of all, we have plenty of gun laws. The thing that we're lacking, I think, is insane asylums. I'm all for us really exploring the mental health issue and bringing back those asylums. But on another note, Israel dealt with these school shootings back in the 70s. And since they instituted new laws and new approaches to school security in 1974, I believe there's only been 2 shootings. That includes armed guards, at least 1, if not 2 armed guards at every school. It also includes training kids on how to react in active shooter situations. So I think there's a couple different approaches that we can have if we're serious about it. I would also add, Buck, if we had leaders that were really serious about this, they wouldn't be sending $40 billion to a corrupt Eastern European nation. They'd actually be spending that money on hardening our schools. I would also add, Buck, when you are advertising gun-free zones, you're actually advertising very soft target for those that are insane to come and shoot up the place. So there are real solutions. The solution that the Democrats want is not a starting point, and that is basically what they want to do is remove the Second Amendment from our Bill of Rights. That's not going to happen. That's not a real solution.
A lot of people, celebrities, professional athletes, and others going on with this. Here's LeBron James, for example. There simply has to be change, has to be praying to the heavens above to all with kids. Look, we share the sentiment of praying for kids in school and for the families and everybody affected. But screaming about change, and Democrats in elected office are doing this too. Why don't they just say what they want? I mean, what is it? It seems like the Democrats, who I will say ideologically have been disastrous on prevention of criminal violence in the last couple of years, we've all seen that, seem to believe that they have the answer to stop school shootings. And I would just want to know, Ned, if they have that answer, legislatively, legally speaking, what is it? What is it that they think is going to stop this?
Well, I would point out, Buck, when Obama in his first term had significant majorities in the House and the Senate, they did absolutely nothing. Their solution, and if they're being completely honest about it, is they want complete, absolute gun control like Australia. That's not going to happen. And they realize that if they're
that would mean buybacks, right? I mean, that goes beyond even control, right? The Australia program is taking guns from everybody who has them currently legally.
Exactly. And I guess the first thing I would say to Democrats, first of all, how do you think you're going to get the 300 million plus guns out of the hands of private citizens? without there being extreme violence. How are you going to revoke the Second Amendment? How are you going to revoke all 50 state constitutions? There's a whole series of things that's completely impractical, is not going to happen. There are practical steps. If we have leadership that is actually serious about this on both sides of the aisle, they're actually going to encourage school security. They're going to actually invest in it. They're actually going to take a really strong look at mental health issues. There are a whole host of solutions to this. Instead, they want to go right for, let's revoke our Bill of Rights. And if you don't do it, you're evil people. Completely not even a starting point for having a rational conversation, Buck.
I mean, here's Joe Biden from the speech last night, which I think it went exactly as I thought it would, where there was a moment, there were some opportunities there to bring the country together, to speak as a healer in chief to the degree that that's possible for the nation in a moment of national grief like this. Instead, Biden just wanted to throw not even just political cheap shots at his opponents, but to say things that they just keep saying, and some of it's just not true. Here he was on the assault weapons ban. Watch.
I spent my career as a senator and a vice president working to pass common sense gun laws. We can and won't prevent every tragedy, but we know they work and have positive impact. When we passed the assault weapons ban, mass shootings went down. When the law expired, mass shootings tripled. The idea that an 18-year-old kid can walk into a gun store and buy 2 assault weapons is just wrong. What in God's name do you need an assault weapon for except to kill someone?
There's so much there. First of all, the assault weapons ban did not bring down nationwide violence at all, actually, statistically, Ned. And this idea that mass shootings tripled, well, I guess that all depends on how they're trying to do how they're compiling the numbers on mass shootings. But the assault weapons ban didn't work as advertised, but now he's saying it did.
Well, the data doesn't back up anything that Joe Biden said last night. But Buck, I want to point out, when I heard that, it was not unexpected. I fully expected Biden to take the moment to be a crass political demagogue. But when politics is your religion and really your precious is political power, you will use any situation to advance those goals. And he did that. And I thought it was a shameful episode for the presidency and for the White House for Biden to do that last night. No, the facts don't back up anything that Joe Biden says on any level. Of course, they're not interested in having a factual, rational conversation on this. They want to use an emotional situation to drive their narrative to achieve their goals, which have nothing to do with the basic rights of the overwhelming majority of law-abiding citizens. They want to use a very, very small percentage of mentally insane people to then take away the rights of literally hundreds of millions of people. Not going to happen, but they're going to try and take every opportunity to do that.
We're going to speak to Ned again later in the show here to discuss the Georgia primary. So, Ned, stick around for that, okay? Thanks for being with us. We'll look at what the primary results mean for the future of Congress. But right now, I want to talk to you about protecting your online data. Big tech is taking advantage of us. They're mining our data, remining our data, selling it. And guess what? We don't benefit from that at all. They count their money, of course, and abuse your privacy in the process. You really think your emails, texts, and messages are private and safe from governments, hackers, and, two-faced, profit-hungry corporations? They're not. Where Secure comes in. Secure's email platform is 100% private. It is Swiss-hosted. They use their own servers in Switzerland, have no ties to American big tech companies. With Secure, there is no data mining whatsoever. It's completely private. That's what makes Secure different from every other email and messaging provider out there. Secure is the best email platform in the world when it comes to security and privacy. It's unmatched. Look, there's a reason Secure built their company the way they did. We need to take a stand and take back our privacy from big tech. So this is what you need to do right now. Use my discount code BUCK when you go to secure.com. You can get access for $7.50 a month, full access. Go to secure.com today, create your secure email address and account. Use promo code BUCK for 25% off for a whole year. That's secur.com, promo code BUCK.
The manhunt for Andrew Abdullah is over. Less than 3 hours after the NYPD released his photograph to the public, Mr. Abdullah knew he had nowhere left to run. Your NYPD investigators identified him as the killer of Daniel Enriquez.
Andrew Abdullah has been arrested in the killing of 48-year-old Daniel Enriquez on a New York City subway this past weekend. Shootings believed to be completely unprovoked, and police are baffled as to what the possible motive could be. The rise in city crime has Mayor Eric Adams once again in hot water, trying to figure out a solution to make the city safe again. Abdullah has a lengthy criminal background, and according to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, it was just 5 years ago in 2017 that Abdullah was arrested along with a dozen other known members of the two Harlem-based gangs in an 83-count indictment. The group was responsible for 8 shooting victims, as well as slashings, gang assaults, gunpoint robberies, and various weapons-related offenses. Joining me now to discuss, New York City Councilmember Joe Borelli. Joe, appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, Buck.
So, Joe, what do we need to know about how is it possible that someone like this is even on the streets to commit such an act, given his lengthy criminal record?
Well, I think that's the question that is really the only one that should be the one at the forefront of anyone. We probably can't ever totally prevent random shootings. I mean, that's a reality that most people don't want to think about, but we can't prevent. There's no police force that can get in the mind of others and predict when something like this happens. But the thing that does limit risk is when we take people who we know to have used guns in the past, we know have a propensity to use guns because they've been arrested multiple times, and we keep those people from being on our streets. That's what didn't happen here with this perp. This is someone, as you pointed out, in 2017 was indicted and arrested in a major case. This means that the NYPD, along with probably federal law enforcement partners, spent countless man hours, probably over a year, unraveling a network, a gang network in Harlem to make this arrest. And all of that was just peed away, Buck, to use a colloquialism, just kind of peed away when you let people like this off the hook. That is the fundamental problem that New Yorkers have to confront. We like to think we have the strongest gun laws in the country. That's something that Democrats in this state constantly tout. But gun laws that aren't enforced with mandatory minimums, when you have people carrying illegal firearms, people who have been involved in shootings before, people on probation from those shootings, then what is the point of having gun laws in the first place?
Mayor Eric Adams, to me, doesn't seem like he's doing a good job at all as a resident of the city. I know you're a resident of the city as well, Joe. And here he is trying to tell everybody that, they're doing their job despite the rise in crime that continues even while he's in office. I mean, it's been going up even since he became the new mayor. Watch this one.
We lost a fellow New Yorker, one of the good guys. We're doing our job, I say over and over again. The NYPD with their partners have removed over 2,900 illegal guns off our streets. As soon as we place them on, more return with bad guys who feel comfortable enough, even after we arrest them, that they can come back out and wreak havoc on our city.
I ask you this, Joe. Is the mayor a moron? Because he speaks always about taking guns off the streets. The problem is criminals. Anyone who knows criminal justice, anyone who knows the history of New York City for the last 30 years understands the problem is people like this guy Abdullah being on the street. It's not taking guns off the streets. And as he even says, there's always going to be a flood of illegal guns from out of the state into the state.
Well, that's the big fallacy, right? I mean, when you talk about taking guns off the street, great, it's a number. But look at the 2021, the year-end statistics. The NYPD confiscated and made arrests in 4,500 gun collars. Over 2,000 of those cases are still open, meaning they're still pending trial, they're still being delayed, they're still being worked through the court system. All the while, those 2,500 arrestees are still out on the streets. Of these cases, by the way, in 2021, guess how many cases actually went to trial and resulted in a conviction? I'll give you one guess, Buck. How many do you think?
Of the 2,000?
Mm-hmm.
50%?
One case went to trial and resulted in a conviction.
Wait, hold on a second, Joe. I got to make sure I got this right because I'm going to be blasting this out on the airwaves all across the country. They had 2,000 gun arrests in New York City, and one case was actually prosecuted?
They got 4,500 guns. About 1,000 or so people pled to misdemeanor charges, meaning you're charged with a mandatory felony. They pleaded down to an attempted possession of a firearm. How one could attempt to possess a firearm but not possess it is beyond me. But only one person basically was forced into a trial. They wouldn't bargain with the guy, and only one case went to trial and resulted in a conviction. There were 2 other trials, to my knowledge, that the person was acquitted, and that's the price of our justice system. Sometimes people are innocent. But one case went to trial, and a person is in jail.
I mean, I remember, didn't the New York Giants star Plexico Burress, didn't he do 3 or 4 years in prison because he carried a gun illegally and actually had an accidental discharge, but he only hurt himself in the process? Didn't they give him multiple years? So I thought New York City was, mandatory minimums for anybody who carries a loaded firearm illegally. You're telling me that thousands of people just pleaded out?
Correct. Probably, I think the number is 1,500 or so out of that 4,500 number. I actually wrote an op-ed in the New York Post. The viewers could just log on to NewYorkPost.com and search my name, and they'll see it pop right up. And we went through the numbers direct from the NYPD, and this is the brutal reality. And then you have how to basically combat this from the cop's perspective. Right, you're asking a cop to apprehend someone who has a firearm that could result in them getting killed. We're asking people to do something very dangerous. And when you see no consequences happen to the perp at the end of the day, I don't blame police for being a little bit more hesitant maybe in 2022 than they were in 2021 or beyond. I mean, what is it all worth?
I wanted you to address this. This is one more thing here. Eric Adams this morning talking to New Yorkers about gun violence. Watch this one.
These crime waves are attached to a small number of New Yorkers that we can't continue to protect and say our city is a safe haven for shooters and dangerous people. It must be a safe haven for innocent New Yorkers. We've increased patrols on the neighborhoods that was experiencing the most violence. More cops in the subway, 24 hours a day. The focused deployment of violence interrupters, a partner in our pursuit to fight violence, increasing visualization and inspections in our subway system. We're seeing the product that we're putting out producing the result that we expect.
Is he doing everything that you think he should do to actually bring down the crime situation here in New York, the violent crime situation?
No, but he is partially right. The gun crimes in this city are the responsibility, really the result, rather, of a fraction of a percent of people in the highest crime precincts. And if you go to those precincts, Buck, you know the NYPD better than anyone. If you go to those precincts, you can speak to the intel officers. They can tell you who the 20 people in their precinct are that are carrying guns or likely to be carrying guns. You can ask the grandmothers in any housing project. Who are the bad guys that you don't want your grandkid to hang out with? And I wish the mayor would solely focus on making life a misery for those 20 or 25 people in every precinct and making it impossible to go about their business as a gang member who runs some corner in some corner of the Bronx or the Queens or wherever. If he did that, that would be doing all he could. That would mean that the entire burden falls on the state criminal justice system and state laws. But we should be focusing entirely on those people.
Joe Borelli, good to see you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Buck.
We have results in from the Georgia primary. It looks like former President Donald Trump's endorsement didn't win across the board. Sometimes pulls it out, sometimes doesn't. We'll talk about that and more with the CEO of American Majority, Ned Ryan, in a moment. Georgia's primary election results are in, and the battle for governor is going to come down to Republican Brian Kemp and Democrat Stacey Abrams. A rematch, friends. Kemp had strong support from former Vice President Mike Pence and defeated the Trump-endorsed David Perdue for the Republican nomination. We have more results to share across the state of Georgia. And joining me now to talk about all that, CEO of American Majority, once again, our friend Ned Ryan. Ned, good to see you again, my friend. So last night, Georgia... this was a big political story. What are your main takeaways?
Well, the main takeaway for me on Georgia is really kind of the story of where Trump has experienced most of his losses, Buck. When he endorses against an incumbent governor or the incumbent governor's machine, it doesn't go well. I mean, see Georgia, see Idaho, see Nebraska. And really, honestly, if I were advising Trump on those endorsements, I would say you either put 5 to 10 million behind each one of those endorsements to enforce it, or you just move along and don't even bother. I mean, Donald Trump is still the 800-pound gorilla in many ways in Republican politics, but I've told people, Buck, you can't take a crippled donkey and make it a winner of the Derby. And David Perdue was a terrible candidate. This was not a shocking surprise in the gubernatorial primary. Where I was surprised, to be honest, Buck, was in the Secretary of State race. I really thought that Jody Heiss was going to force a runoff. But what I think did happen, I've seen some indication of this. I think that 7 to 10% of Raffensperger's vote was actually from the Democrats. They put him over that 50% margin that he needed to avoid a runoff. So that to me was the biggest surprise. But I will point out too, Buck, people want to focus on the gubernatorial race. There was another primary last night in which Herschel Walker absolutely destroyed the primary field. And it was Donald Trump that talked Herschel into running, endorsed him, and basically ended the Senate primary months ago. And last night, I think he got 68% of the vote. Wasn't even close to having a runoff. So mixed bag of good last night. But again, kind of continuing that trend. When he endorses against an incumbent governor, not a very good win record.
Here's just for everyone home a rundown so they could see of how it all went down. Brian Kemp, as we said, he won. He's going to face Stacey Abrams for governor this fall, and he defeated her 4 years ago, but it was tight. Herschel Walker, the former NFL star and Georgia college football star, who's Trump-backed, as Ned said, he is going to represent Georgia, or rather represent the Republican side in the Senate race there against Raphael Warnock, which is going to be a real throwdown. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene won the Republican primary for her House district. Chris Carr, Georgia's Attorney General, also defeated his Trump-backed challenger, John Gordon. So as you said, Herschel Walker, you could say, high-stepped into the end zone, Ned, spiked the football in the end zone. We interviewed him on the radio show the day of. I mean, he's going to be formidable. How do you think how do you think he goes up against? How does he stack up against Raphael Warnock, the current Democrat senator who was one of those 2 Democrat pickups that was just brutal in the beginning of 2021?
Well, the most recent polls, Buck, in the last couple of weeks showed Herschel up 5 points over Warnock. And I have to tell you, one of the dynamics I've seen with Herschel Walker, the only person I've seen raise money from small dollar donors exceeding what Herschel's been able to do has been Donald Trump. I mean, Herschel Walker is an absolute fundraising machine. He's going to be well funded. I think he's got a very, very good chance of beating Warnock in the fall. I actually think that where Trump is endorsed and his candidates are winning these Senate races, you're going to see Senator J.D. Vance. You're going to see Senator Herschel Walker. I think he's going to endorse in Arizona, Missouri, Nevada, all of these races. You're going to have Trump candidates actually become the senators because of the 2022 dynamic. So I feel really good about Herschel Walker, probably as good as I feel about any other candidate running on the Republican ticket this fall.
Now, there's also in the background of all of these primary elections, Ned, the so-called Jim Crow 2.0 allegation. That was the quote. Biden said it. Stacey Abrams has said it. So many Democrats have said it. The Georgia primary voting on the Republican side, for example, just on the Republican side, I think it was, what was it, up 60% from the last minute? I mean, it was up a huge number. Was it up, might have even been up over 100%. It was some crazy number.
Yeah, I think actually I saw a statistic. It was 168% over the 2020 primary block. I mean, just a staggering turnout in which, all these claims of the Jim Crow 2.0 laws and voter suppression in between 2020 and 2022, we actually saw a massive, significant increase in turnout. So again, voter suppression had actually nothing to do, as with what most things Democrats say, had nothing to do with reality.
Here is, by the way, Stacey Abrams, who is still pushing the idea, even after the and it was massive across the board, the turnout in Georgia, right? I mean, it was record-breaking all over the state, Democrat, Republican, African-American primary participation way up. I mean, all good things. People fired up in the state of Georgia to vote for their candidates. That's what we like to see. Stacey Abrams is still out there saying, well, it was still voter suppression. Watch.
the equivalent of saying that more people voting means there's no suppression is like telling people that if you get in the water, there are no sharks. If more people get in the water, there are fewer sharks. There's no correlation there. Voter suppression is about blocking or impeding certain types of voters from participating in elections. And as you pointed out, right now, Republicans have the most competitive elections. But what we also don't know is what is the mail-in ballot rejection rate? What are the difficulties people are having?
I mean, so basically, like, just to be clear, no matter what the numbers actually show, they're just going to say, well, the numbers would have been higher except for your voter suppression. They say, well, where's the voter suppression?
You know, they're always going to be used. They're going to be using this to browbeat people into getting the election laws that they want, which have nothing to do with free and fair elections. And until they get what they want, which would absolutely annihilate free and fair elections, they're going to continue to browbeat people into, well, you're racist, you want voter suppression, you don't want certain demographics actually voting, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. And the thing that's amazing to me, Buck, in all of this, you can have Stacey Abrams saying all of these things, when in fact the real numbers and the real data actually show, for example, nearly 70% of the Black community wants photo ID. When you get to other minority communities like Hispanics, it goes into the 80s. So they're saying one thing to drive a narrative to get what they want, which is, again, political power. But what they're saying, again, is nothing but lies that have nothing to do with reality or facts or data or statistics.
You think Georgia is the single most important battleground to really send a message in the midterms? Is that top of your list of states?
It's one of them. Can we actually have definitive wins statewide at the gubernatorial, at the Senate race? Can we actually have these wins to show that we're changing the trends? There's a lot of work still to be done, Buck. I'm not a fan of the Georgia election integrity laws that were passed. They need to be strengthened. But I think you're going to see some wins this fall that should be pretty encouraging for us. But again, there's still work to be done. And we've got 2 legislative sessions, spring of 2023, spring of 2024, to fix all the problems that I think still exist in some of these battleground states like Georgia.
And Ryan, everybody. Ned, appreciate it, buddy. Good to see you.
Thanks, Buck.
Johnny Depp made a dramatic return to the stand today, calling out Amber Heard's, quote, savage testimony. We'll have that and more coming up in Quick Hits. Right now, I want to talk to you about the silencer shop. If you're like me, you believe it's your right to keep and bear arms. More than 100 million Americans identify as firearm owners, and in 2021, there were more than 3 million new gun owners in the United States. Silencer Shop is the #1 source for suppressors in the U.S. They're a Texas-based company founded in 2010 with a focus on outstanding customer service. Dedication to customers like you, that's one of the reasons they're ranked 4.9 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot. That's from over 25,000 reviews. Silencer Shop kiosk makes the NFA process easy for your suppressor, short barrel rifle, or any NFA item. By tapping into Silencer Shop for your ATF E-Form 4, you'll be able to get your can in your hands faster than ever. Customers have said they receive their suppressors in 70 to 90 days sometimes. Check out Silencer Shop's YouTube or Instagram pages or visit silencershop.com. And if you'll be at the NRA annual meeting in Houston, May 27th to 29th, be sure to stop by their booth. Partner with Silencer Shop for the easiest way to get your suppressor. Quick Hits are up next. Henry Kissinger says Ukraine should cede territory to Russia to end the war, and Whoopi Goldberg went off on a gun rant while speaking on the tragic Uvalde school shooting. Just another day of Quick Hits here, and the ladies of The View and all of it. We'll get into that in a second. First, okay, here's Whoopi Goldberg of The View. We mentioned this one. Watch.
Let's apply his abortion laws to guns by deputizing citizens to sue anyone involved in gun violence. So you sold an AR-15 at the gun show? See you in court. Does your neighbor have too big an arsenal? Call the cops.
What is she even? Does she know anything? I mean, it's amazing. I mean, she's talking about firearms. Does she even know the basics of the laws that she's now? Remarkable. Well, anyway, it's The View. It is the worst political analysis you will find on any cable show, I think, in existence. Henry Kissinger, you all know him. A lot of people probably have some pretty negative feelings about the guy, but he's supposed to be something of a foreign policy expert. But he's saying that Ukraine should give up territory to Russia and in exchange for peace. Watch.
Movement towards negotiations and negotiations on peace need to begin the next 2 months or so. Ideally, the dividing line should return to the status quo ante.
I think he's right that there needs to be a negotiation to end this war as soon as possible. I don't know if people really want to hear from Henry Kissinger or not on that one. I'll leave that to you. Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, still going on this trial. Here he is making a return to the stand today. Watch.
It's insane to hear heinous accusations of violence, sexual violence, that she's attributed to me, that she's accused me of. Ridiculous, humiliating, ludicrous, painful, savage, unimaginably brutal, cruel, and all false.
Johnny Depp says they're all lies. We'll see what the jury says about this. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is next. Fields High.